Hey guys, Sue's here. Welcome back to another What's for Dinner on Keto, easy keto dinner ideas and keto recipes video. If you're already subscribed here, you know we try to make these videos every single week to give you a little keto meal prepping and batch cooking motivation. Whew, I am so grateful to be back today as me and my entire family have been so sick the last month, and I'm glad to say we are finally fully recovered and ready to get into it. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our weekly keto cooking videos. Let's get into it. I wanna catch the wave. First up this week, we made this awesome Keto Monterey Chicken from Casey Trenum's blog. I will link the original recipe down below as always. This was super duper delicious. So to start with, I took just couple tablespoons of butter, put it in a cast iron skillet with a little olive oil over medium-high heat. I'm taking about 2 pounds of chicken breast here, and I did go ahead and cut these, and then I put them in a Ziploc bag and kind of pounded them out to make them a little thinner so they cook up faster. Seasoned to this side with salt, pepper, and garlic powder, and then I'm going to put them in that hot pan of butter and olive oil with the seasoned side down, and go ahead and let those start frying for a few minutes on each side. Once I have them in the pan, I'm doing salt, pepper, and garlic powder on the other side as well. And you can see I am just frying these up until we get a nice color on it. And I did go ahead and put the lid on just to assist with getting it cooked all the way through. Now I have some barbecue sauce here. That's a low-carb keto sauce. I always make this in a huge batch and then just freeze it in cup-sized portions to use later in recipes. I love it. It reminds me of sauce my aunt turned me on to, Diana barbecue sauce. I think it's called Diana out of Canada, I think. Anyway, that's where she gets it. So super duper good. I'll try to link the recipe for that sauce down below. You can see I've got my chicken looking nice and brown, and now I'm just gonna spoon some of that sauce on top of each chicken breast. Now I'm crumbling some bacon and putting on here. I just used 4 slices. I actually cooked this yesterday in the air fryer, 400 for 10 minutes, and it was in the fridge, so it's not crumbling as easy as it would if it was freshly cooked, but there we go. Now I'm taking some fresh shredded extra sharp cheddar, and I did do it myself in a food processor just to cut down on some of the carbs in this recipe. And I'm gonna put some of that on top of each piece of chicken. And then I also have a remnant of some shredded Monterey Jack cheese in the refrigerator that I'm gonna mix with that and top each piece of chicken as well. Now I did go ahead and cut my oven on to broil, and I'm gonna stick this whole entire dish into that broiler for about 5 minutes. Just put a little parsley on top to give it a little pop of color when it comes out. And here it is all done. You can see how my chicken, the cheese on it is nice and brown. This is super duper delicious. Here it is plated up just over some steamed cauliflower rice, and I just used some of that chicken juice and barbecue sauce as a little gravy on the cauliflower rice before putting the chicken on top. Super good, super easy, perfect keto weeknight meal. Next up, we have this awesome pan-fried pork chop over long petite green beans with a homemade garlic butter melting on top. Oh my gosh, this is probably, I don't know, I like pork chops anyway, you can cook them. So to get started, we're gonna make the garlic butter. So I'm just taking 1 stick of unsalted butter that's at room temperature. I'm just going to go ahead and mash that and kind of whip it up a little bit. Then I'm going to add my seasoning combo to it, which is a 1/2 tablespoon garlic powder and a tablespoon of dried parsley along with some salt and pepper. And I'm going to go ahead and mix in all of those dry seasonings first before adding a tablespoon of lemon juice and then whipping that together as well. And once we have that all incorporated fully, we're just gonna stick this to the side and go ahead and get started on our pork chops. Now for this, I'm using 4 bone-in pork chops. These are nice size, kind of thick pork chops. And as you can see, I'm just cutting little slits in the fat around the pork chop, and that's gonna help them not to curl up into that, you know, when you fry pork chops and they get all buckled out in the middle. It's going to prevent that. Washed my hands really well, and then I'm using some sea salt. Look at the holes in this lid. This is Kirkland's Costco sea salt. I'm never going to buy this one again just because it doesn't come out. I always have to open it, and and do it that way. Ready to move back to my old sea salt. Now I'm putting some ground pepper on these as well, and then I will flip them over and do the other side. And in my cast iron skillet, and I do have this linked in the description box, actually got this, it's an Amazon Basics one, and I absolutely love it. And if you look like around the holidays, they always put them on sale. Anyway, I'm going to put my pork chops in there along with about 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter once I get it to temperature. And I know you're not supposed to really crowd your meat, but you're getting ready to watch me crowd my meat because I just wanted all of these to go in at the same time, because I am going to sear them really nicely on each side in the cast iron, and then I'm going to move them to a separate pan to stay hot while I finish the rest of the recipe and finish cooking all the way through. So as you can see, we're just going to fry those up on both sides. And after I get them fried, and like I said, I'm just removing them to another pan to finish cooking to temperature all the way through and to stay nice and warm while we make our green beans. Now for our green beans, this is a pound of just thawed long stem petite green beans. I get these at Costco in a huge bulk bag. Absolutely love them. They're the closest things to fresh green beans that I've found. Putting them right into those pork chop juices and that butter that was in there, and I'm just going to cook those. You can see I'm moving them with the tongs all around. I'm going to cook them until they get a little bit of char on them but are still firm. And then to plate it up, I just put a little bed of green beans down on the plate. Got my pork chop on top, made sure it was still nice and hot, and then topped it with a big old dollop of that homemade garlic butter, and it just melts and goes over the entire plate of food. And oh my gosh, this was so good. My husband's like, how hard was it to make this garlic butter? Because I would just like to have this in the fridge all the time, and it was so delicious. This was based on a Diet Doctor recipe, and of course that'll be linked down below. Definitely going to make a batch of that to put on steaks. Next up, I threw together some chili dogs. If you've been around for a while, you know I'd like to do at least one super high-fat meal, high-calorie meal each week. And this week it was some chili dogs with some fried zucchini. So to start with, I did some avocado oil in a pan over medium heat. I'm just throwing together some hot dog chili. I don't use a recipe for this, and this isn't even the way I normally would cook it. I'm just using what I have on hand. So once my oil is hot, I added about 1/4 of a cup minced up onion. It's kind of just what I had left over from another recipe. 1/2 pound of hamburger meat, because it's just making a really small batch for what I'm doing, and used my handy dandy meat chopper upper, best $5 I ever spent tool, again linked down below. And I'm just browning that all together, putting a nice amount of Worcestershire sauce on top of that and continuing to mix it in. Now I had some tomato paste left over, so I added about 2 tablespoons of that. Again, this does add carbs, so you know, just gotta watch what you're doing here and keep count of everything. But I'm just gonna mix that in. Again, that's not what I usually use for my hot dog chili, but this all worked out perfectly. Just sometimes you just need to use what you have on hand. Went ahead and added 1/3 of a cup water, and I'm just gonna keep mixing that and cooking it up. A little bit of mustard, a little bit of garlic powder, heavy amount of chili powder, some salt, some pepper, and then again stirring that all up. And as some of that liquid is evaporating out, it was a little thick, so I added another 1/3 cup of water. I do like my chili to be on the thicker side, but we're gonna let this sit on low while we make the rest of the recipe, so I want to make sure it didn't get too thick. And of course, just taste it as you go and make this however you prefer. Again, under these circumstances, I'm just kind of cooking a lot of stuff with what I have on hand. Now in a separate bowl, I am gonna make what we're gonna use for our hot dog buns. So I'm taking 1.5 cups of almond flour and adding to that a teaspoon of xanthan gum, 1/4 a teaspoon salt, 1/4 a teaspoon dried oregano, and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Then I just mix that all in together. And in this separate bowl, I'm taking 2 cups of mozzarella cheese and about 1 ounce of cream cheese. Microwave that for a minute, take it out, mix it, microwave it for 30 seconds, put it back in the microwave for another 30 seconds, take it out, and then it is going to be nice and melty, and I'll add those dry ingredients to it. And I always like to just go ahead and use the spoon to mix that in as well as I can to start, and give that cheese time to cool down before I add my egg to it. And then again, I'll mix that pretty well with my spoon before I get my hands in there. Now, quick tip when you're working with any kind of keto dough, oil your hands. I always keep a little avocado oil beside me and just make sure my hands are nice and coated. I'm gonna work that all together to make sure it's all incorporated before turning it out onto some parchment. I re-oiled my hands, and we're gonna knead it some more. And we're gonna roll this, but before I do, I kind of always like to pat it out to the shape that I kind of want to go with before I put another piece of parchment on top and get my rolling pin out and roll it into the shape. And for this, we're gonna do about 1/4 of an inch thickness, and we're gonna roll it out into a rectangle. Some of your ends are too thin. After you do that, you can just do like I do and fold them up and mash them together. Again, for this meal, we are not aiming for perfection, guys. We are aiming for delicious keto comfort food. Now I'm taking a butter knife, scoring it down the middle and across to make 4 separate sections and pulling those out. Now for this recipe, I am going to be using Hebrew National beef franks. And I did go ahead and put some holes on those. We don't want any exploding wieners. And putting one in the middle of each piece of dough. And then you're going to pinch those short ends together around it. And it doesn't matter how this looks, really. When you put it in the oven, it's all going to bake up and be delicious. After I have each of those kind of pinched together with the middle open, I'm going to get my hot dog chili that's been on the stove on low. And I'm just going to spoon a couple tablespoons of that into each opening. And to top this off, I'm going to use some shredded extra sharp cheddar, again, that I did myself to cut down on carbs, and put that on each of them. Then I'm putting this whole thing in the oven for about 20 minutes on 375. Now, while that's cooking, I'm going to throw together some zucchini fries. I took 2 medium zucchini, washed them, chopped them down to look like fries. And in this dish, I have 1 beaten egg, a little salt and pepper. In a separate dish, I have about 1/2 cup of almond flour, and I'm adding about 1/4 of a cup of grated Parmesan cheese to that, some salt, some pepper, some red pepper flakes because I want it to be spicy, and some garlic powder. And then I'm just going to my hands and break up any Parmesan chunks and kind of mix that together. Now, I dumped all my zucchini into that bowl of egg, and I am unceremoniously coating it with my hands, and I'm just going to plop all of those into that almond flour mixture because I do not have time to individually dredge all of these zucchini fries. You know what I'm saying? After I did that, I took a little bit of olive oil cooking spray. I'm going to just spray that directly on my fries after I take them out of this mixture and put them on the plate. That's going to help them fry up in the air fryer to the texture that I would like. I do always preheat my air fryer for at least 5 minutes before I start cooking in it. And so I did that, and I'm going to also spray some of that spray on the inside of it. And I cooked these in about small batches. I did 3 batches. I did them at 400 for 10 minutes each. Here are the chili dogs out of the oven. And here it is all plated up. Oh my goodness, this was the perfect inside keto date night food for me and my husband to actually sit down after the kids went to bed and have a late guilty dinner. Super duper good. You could dip the zucchini fries in something if you like, but they were plenty flavorful as is. And I didn't want to add any more carbs and calories to this already high calorie meal. Lastly, this week we made some Cajun garlic shrimp over Zoodles. This was super duper delicious. So in a pan over medium-high heat, I added a couple tablespoons of butter. And after it heated and pretty much stopped bubbling, I added a pound of wild-caught. I did get these frozen at COSTCO, but they are still wild-caught Key West shrimp, medium ones. Put those in there, salt, pepper, a nice amount of Tony's Creole seasoning, and you're just going to cook these for about a minute on each side. Don't want to overcook your shrimp. Then I'm going to remove them and their juices to a little metal bowl. Add about another tablespoon or 2 of butter to my pan. And when it gets done bubbling, I'm going to add about, I would say like 1 small minced onion. And I'm going to actually cook this for a good amount of time. I'm going to work on these onions to get them all nice and browned. And then I'm going to add a heaping teaspoon of minced garlic to that and stir it constantly for about a minute before adding a tablespoon of white wine vinegar. I'm going to scrape up all the bits, kind of deglaze the pan, and let most of the vinegar evaporate out. Adding a 1/2 cup of heavy cream to that, mixing that in, and then because I want the spice in this, I'm adding a teaspoon of the Tony's Creole and a heavy amount of red pepper flakes. And if you don't like it spicy, you need to adjust your seasonings, because I'm going to tell you what, this dish lit us up and it was so good. Mixing that all together, bringing it to a simmer. Once it gets to the desired thickness that I want, you can kind of tell by just putting your utensil in, and once it gathers and stays on, good to go. Add my shrimp and all their juices back to it, and then I'm just going to stir it up long enough for those to get heated through. I did go ahead and add a tablespoon of dried parsley at this point. It would probably be better with fresh parsley, but it was absolutely delicious just as is. Just cook it long enough to heat them all the way through. Again, you don't want to overcook your shrimp. And then to serve it, I just steamed some Zoodles in a microwave bag, topped it with shrimp and sauce, and then a little bit of shredded Parmesan cheese. This was absolutely delicious, and boy, did it finish clearing our sinuses out. There you go, guys. That's this week What's for Dinner on Keto. Easy keto dinner ideas and recipes to give you a little motivation to get your batch cooking on. I hope that this gave you some inspiration. Please hit that thumbs up button if you like what we're doing, and comment down below. Subscribe to our channel. The more interaction our videos get, the more they get seen by people trying to follow a keto diet and live a keto lifestyle. Till next time, stay healthy, guys. Bye.
Wait for better days to come and carry us like wind in our sails. Hold on tight, I can smell the shore, it's right in front of us if we